She always believed that music could fix things, even when life felt too heavy for a child to carry. She didn't come from a big house or a rich family. She lived with her mother in a tiny rented room that looked more like a storage space than a home. The walls were cracked, the paint was peeling, and the little window barely let sunlight in. But even inside that small room, she tried to stay hopeful. Her mother used to be strong. She worked long shifts in a nearby factory, returning home every night with tired eyes but a warm smile. She would place her hand on her daughter's head and say, "We'll be okay. Just keep believing." But everything changed when her mother's health suddenly collapsed. What began as small coughs turned into long nights of breathing difficulty. Soon, she couldn't even stand properly without holding on to something. Their already small income vanished. The doctor said she needed treatment, but treatment meant money, and money was the one thing they didn't have. The medicine they could afford offered only temporary relief. Some days, her mother couldn't even get out of bed. And every time the girl looked at her mother struggling, her chest tightened in fear. She wished she could grow up fast, earn money, fix everything, anything, but she was still too young. There was a community hall near their room. It wasn't fancy. It was old, dusty, and used mostly for small local events. But inside that hall sat something that changed the girl's life, an old piano. Its wood was scratched, some keys were yellow, and a few were slightly out of tune. But to her, that piano was magical. It felt like a door to a world where she didn't have to think about bills, medicines, or fear of losing her mother. Every day after school, she would walk quietly to the hall. She didn't have proper clothes or expensive shoes like other kids, but she had a heart that felt deeply and fingers that learned fast. She sat on the wooden bench, placed her small hands on the cold keys, and pressed them gently. The first sound always made her smile. Even if the piano wasn't perfect, the sound felt warm, that she taught herself everything she knew. She didn't have a teacher, videos, or books. She learned by listening, by feeling. Sometimes she hummed a tune she remembered from somewhere, maybe from a radio outside a shop, maybe from a passing car, and tried to copy it on the piano. Sometimes she made her own little melodies, simple ones with only a few repeating notes. But those small melodies carried her emotions, her worries, her hopes. The hall had an old caretaker, a kind man who kept to himself. One evening he heard the girl playing. He stood quietly behind the door, listening. Her tune wasn't something complicated, just a gentle, simple melody, but there was something honest in it, something that made the heart soften. The caretaker slowly walked inside and sat a few feet away, not wanting to disturb her. When she finished, she turned around in surprise, worried she might be scolded for touching the piano, but instead of scolding, the caretaker smiled. He asked her where she learned to play. She simply shrugged and said she just played what she felt. The caretaker nodded and told her that she had something special, something rare. He encouraged her to keep practicing. That was the first time anyone had ever said she was good at something. As days passed, the caretaker became her quiet supporter. He let her play for as long as she wanted, sometimes even after closing time. He fixed the loose keys as much as he could and cleaned the piano just to make her practice easier. One evening, he gave her a piece of news that made her heart jump. He told her about a local talent audition happening the following month. It wasn't just any event, it was organized by a well-known businessman, someone respected for helping young talent from poor families. The winner would receive financial assistance for their family and support for their future education. When the caretaker finished talking, he looked at her carefully, hoping she would understand how big this opportunity was. He told her, "You should try." But the girl wasn't sure. She didn't have confidence. She didn't have fancy clothes, a professional instrument, or training like other kids. She only had a simple tune and a heart full of emotions. She thanked the caretaker and walked home with a head full of thoughts. That night, she sat beside her mother, who lay weak on the bed. Her mother noticed the worry on her face and asked what was wrong. The girl hesitated, but eventually shared everything: the audition, the prize, the chance to help. Her mother listened quietly. For a long moment, she stayed silent. Then, with a faint smile, she said it might be better not to go. She didn't want her daughter to face rejection or embarrassment. She didn't want people to laugh at her. The girl felt tears forming in her eyes. She didn't care if others laughed. She wanted to do something, anything, to save her mother. She took her mother's hand and whispered, "Let me try, please." Hearing that small voice filled with courage, the mother finally nodded. She didn't have the strength to argue. And deep down, even she wanted to believe that maybe this small chance could turn into something good. From that day onward, the girl practiced harder. She didn't practice to win. She practiced to help. She practiced to give her mother hope. Every time she pressed a key, she imagined her mother smiling again. She imagined a life where they didn't have to worry about medicines and bills. She poured all her emotions into one tune, the same simple melody. She often played when she needed comfort. She didn't know music theory or technique. She only knew how to play from the heart. And sometimes that's far stronger than skill. The day of the audition arrived. The hall was bigger than she expected. Bright lights, shiny floors, expensive outfits, and confident faces everywhere. Some kids arrived with their private music teachers. Some carried polished instruments in beautiful cases. Everything around her felt intimidating. She stood quietly near a corner, clutching her hands together, trying to steady her breathing. A few kids noticed her simple clothes and whispered among themselves. She heard small laughs, the kind that hurt more than words. But she remembered her mother's face, pale but smiling, telling her to be brave. That was enough to keep her standing. When her name was called, she walked slowly toward the grand piano placed in the center of the stage. It looked huge and polished, much better than the old one she practiced on. Her hands were trembling so much she had to rub them on her clothes to dry the sweat. She sat on the bench, feeling hundreds of eyes staring at her. For a moment she felt like running away. Then she remembered the nights her mother struggled to breathe. She remembered crying quietly, wishing for a miracle. She remembered her own promise, "I will try." She placed her fingers on the keys. The hall became silent. Even the small whispers stopped. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, and then she played. The first few notes were soft, almost hesitant. But soon her hands found their rhythm. The melody was simple, the same tune she had played 100 times alone in the community hall. But today it carried something more. It carried fear, hope, love, pain, and strength, everything she had been hiding inside. Each note felt like a piece of her heart. The audience didn't know her story yet, but they felt something real in the sound. Some leaned forward. Some blinked slowly, trying to understand why such a basic tune felt so emotional. Even the judges, who had seen thousands of performances, watched her with growing curiosity. By the time she reached the last line of her melody, her eyes were full of tears. Not because she was sad, but because she finally let everything out through her music. When the final note echoed across the hall, the girl slowly lifted her hands from the piano and stared at the keys. Breathing heavily, she had no idea that this moment, the simple tune, was about to change everything for her and her mother. When the last note faded into silence, she kept her eyes closed for a moment, almost afraid to look up. She didn't know if she had played well. She didn't know if the people liked it. She only knew one thing: she had played with everything inside her heart. Slowly, she lifted her head. The hall was still quiet. Hundreds of people were staring at her, not with laughter or judgment, but with something completely unexpected: softness, surprise, and emotion. Some had their hands near their mouths. Some blinked repeatedly, as if trying to understand what they had just heard. Then, almost like a wave, the entire audience stood up. The sound of clapping filled the hall, loud and warm. It wasn't polite clapping. It wasn't forced. It was real, powerful applause that echoed from every corner. She didn't expect this. She had imagined people laughing at her simple tune, whispering about her clothes, dismissing her as someone who didn't belong there. But instead, they clapped as if they had just witnessed something rare. Her small chest rose and fell quickly. She didn't know whether to smile or cry. Her hands trembled again, but this time because she was overwhelmed. Among the judges sitting in the front row was a man known for his wealth and strict standards. People often referred to him as a millionaire who could change someone's life with a single decision. He was not easy to impress. Many performers before her had tried their best, yet he hardly reacted. But now he stood up with the rest of the hall, clapping slowly at first, then more firmly. It was the first time anyone had ever clapped for her like that. After the applause settled, she stepped back from the piano, unsure what to do. One of the staff members gently guided her toward the front of the stage where the judges sat. She kept her eyes down, shy and nervous. She didn't know if applause meant she had won anything. She didn't dare to hope too much. The millionaire judge leaned forward, studying her closely. His expression was not cold like before. There was something warm in his eyes, something almost protective. He asked her a simple question. "Where did you learn to play like that?" Her voice was small, but steady. She told him she learned on her own on an old piano in a community hall. She didn't mention teachers or classes because she never had those things. She didn't talk about poverty or struggle. She didn't know how to. She simply said she played because music helped her breathe. The judge exchanged glances with the other judges, all of them surprised. One of them gently asked her why she looked so emotional when she played. That question made her swallow hard. For a moment she didn't speak. She felt the familiar pain inside her chest again, the worry she carried every day. "I wanted to help my mom," she finally whispered. The microphone carried her tiny voice across the silent hall. No one expected that answer. The judge leaned back for a moment, his expression changing. He asked her what she meant. The girl explained slowly, carefully, that her mother was sick and they couldn't afford treatment. She said she practiced every day, hoping one simple song could somehow make a difference. There was no dramatic crying, no sadness meant to impress. Just a child telling the truth with honesty so pure it touched every person listening. The millionaire judge lowered his eyes for a moment, as if thinking about something painful from his past. No one understood why his face softened suddenly, but inside something deep awakened in him. Something he had buried long ago. He stood up again and asked the audience to quiet down. He walked up to the stage, something he never did for any performer before. He reached her gently and spoke into the microphone so everyone could hear. "There is talent," he said. "And then there is heart. You have both." The audience murmured in agreement. He continued speaking, explaining that while many performers had technical skills, not everyone could deliver pure emotion through something as simple as a short melody. She managed to move hundreds of people without loud music, without fast notes, without showing off. She played from a place of truth. And that kind of music was something even professionals spent years trying to achieve. Then he did something unbelievable. He announced that she was chosen as the winner. The hall erupted in applause again, louder than before. She covered her face with her hands, unable to believe what was happening. Her heart raced so fast she thought she might faint. Winning wasn't just a medal or a trophy to her. It meant hope. It meant her mother might finally get help, but the biggest moment came a few minutes later. The judge announced that he wanted to personally meet her mother. He said no family struggling like theirs should face difficulties alone. He promised to arrange full medical treatment for her mother, all expenses covered, until she completely recovered. The audience gasped and clapped again. Some people even wiped their eyes. The girl stood there, speechless. For so long, she had been carrying this fear alone. And now, suddenly, someone powerful was offering support she never dreamed of. Later that evening, when she returned home, she ran inside the small room, calling out for her mother with breathless excitement. Her mother was sitting weakly, trying to stay awake. When the girl finally told her everything, the applause, the winning, the judge's promise, her mother covered her mouth in disbelief. She didn't know if she should cry or laugh. She pulled her daughter close and hugged her tightly, whispering how proud she was. In the following weeks, everything changed quickly. The judge kept his word. Doctors began her mother's treatment right away. They visited her home, checked her regularly, and gave her medicines and support she could never afford before. Slowly, her strength began to return. The coughing reduced, her breathing improved, and she could finally get out of bed without pain. The girl felt like she was watching a miracle happen. One that began with a simple tune she created from love. But something else happened too. The millionaire judge took a special interest in her musical journey. He invited her to visit a proper music academy, not to force her into something, but to give her a chance to explore her talent with better instruments and teachers. She was nervous at first, but when she touched a beautifully tuned piano in the academy, she couldn't stop smiling. The teachers there were amazed by her natural ability. They said she had something rare, an instinct that couldn't be taught. And the more she learned, the more her music blossomed. One day, the judge visited the academy to check on her progress. He listened quietly as she played a new tune she had created. It wasn't perfect, but it was full of warmth. When she finished, he nodded proudly, telling her that she had a future brighter than she knew. He didn't treat her like a charity case. He treated her like someone with real potential. As months passed, her mother recovered fully. She became stronger than she had been in years. She could walk, cook, talk, and smile without pain. Watching her daughter play piano in small events brought her joy she never imagined. Sometimes she would sit in the front row, hands folded, eyes shining with pride. The girl, too, grew with every passing day. She wasn't scared anymore. She wasn't unsure of herself. She wasn't the quiet child who played in an empty hall to escape her sadness. She became someone who understood the power of her own heart. Her simple tune, the one she created out of fear and hope, became the melody that changed her life. It saved her mother. It softened a strict millionaire judge. It touched hundreds of strangers who felt her emotions through those few gentle notes. People often think miracles come from big actions. But sometimes miracles begin with something small, like a child pressing piano keys with shaking fingers, trying to hold on to hope. And that little girl, who once had nothing but a simple melody, found herself in a future filled with music, love, and possibilities she could never have imagined. Her mother often said, "You didn't just save me, you saved yourself too." And deep down, the girl knew it was true.